Hey there, Sart here, and I am bringing you the first of 3 videos that I'm going to be doing in this Top 20 series. This is based off the poll that I put out for you guys after I hit 1,000 subs, and I was just trying to figure out, something special that I could do for you guys, something that you guys would like to see after I hit that milestone. And a lot of you guys wanted me to do like a tier ranking video, and so I put out another poll to sort of figure out, which of those things you wanted me to do. And I put the option out there to do sort of a top 20 of all 3, the 3 things being units, STMRs, and vision cards, and you guys really jumped on that idea, and sounds like that's something that you guys all really wanted. So I'm going to do that for you guys. I am going to break it up into 3 different videos, because otherwise it would be stupidly long, and I wouldn't want to put you guys through that. Each one of these 3 videos I think is going to be fairly long in its own right, and I'm going to start with units, because I think that's a pretty important one. What units I think are important units to have, important units to sort of focus your resources on and focus your time on. Now, with that said, of course, any video that you watch that ranks units or suggests units for you guys to look at and to focus on, all videos of this nature are purely subjective, and they are from the eye of the beholder. All right, and so I want to just go ahead and put that out there. This top 20 list is my personal opinion, and it is 100% biased towards my play style, the type of content I prefer to play. I am heavily invested in Clash of Wills, but I have absolutely zero investment in Dark Visions. And so I am naturally going to be biased towards global exclusive units. And in fact, all of the units, with the exception of 1 on my top 20 list, are global exclusive units. And so, keep that in mind. If you were hoping I would, also throw some of the, the JP units in the mix, sorry. I find those units utterly bland and completely useless for the most part. There are some nice, Neo Vision Awakenings that I like to use for budget videos, and I might do another video later, talking about, sort of like the top 10 budget units. But for this video, I'm just doing my top 20 units that I think are still useful in this game for completing content like Clash of Wills, and also for trials. And so those are the 2 things I focus on in this game. I focus on Clash of Wills, and I focus on trial content. And so the units that I use and that I focus on, and that I think are really great and useful in this game currently, are in this top 20 list. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, you may have a completely different opinion, and that is totally valid, right? So everything in this video is my opinion, and you should take it as such. Take it with a grain of salt. Feel free to comment in the comments below where you think I may have misstepped, or if you think there are other units that you feel are valid and should be on this list. But I am not the type of person that looks at every single unit in the game and goes in and does like a deep dive on every single unit that comes out. There are lots of other great content creators that will do that for you. Sinzar usually puts out every like 4 to 6 months. He usually does like a more comprehensive tier or rank video for units. And so if that's the kind of thing that you're looking for, where it kind of takes in all the units that are sort of out there in the meta currently, then look for that over on Sinzar's channel. This is just my personal top 20, and so with that, let's go ahead and get started and see who's on this list. Do keep in mind that where the unit is on the list doesn't necessarily mean they are a good or bad unit. It's a top 20 list, so every unit on this list definitely has some value. I'll say, units sort of near the bottom are definitely lower on my priority list, whereas units at the top are higher on my priority list, but they're all still good units. So, any unit that has made it on this list is, in my opinion, a good unit that is worth your time, effort, and resources. So do keep that in mind. Even if they're at the bottom of the list, They're not trash, but they're just not as good as the units that are at the top. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start with number 20. So Yoshikiri is, he's an older unit, but he got some upgrades that specifically, make him a bit better for Clash of Wills. He does have some really nice support skills in his kit. His LB got an upgrade as long as you have him at EX2 or higher. And he got some nice killers and amps for the team if you get him to EX3. And so it does require that he has some higher EX levels, but he is an older unit, so maybe you have a Yoshikiri at EX3 already, or maybe you have a bunch lying around but you just never really knew what to do with them. So he can actually be pretty useful. He's mostly useful for ice and for water support, as well as bringing human killers to the team. Now his limit burst is actually quite nice, but you do have to have him at EX2 to get the upgraded limit burst, which does a 350% full buff for 5 turns. It deals some damage. The damage is not great, but yeah, it's not, don't worry too much about the damage. It does remove parameter reductions and status ailments, or rather removes chop, stop, and charm. And then it does an 85% across the board elemental resists for 5 turns, and that's quite nice. So for a support unit, that's quite nice. I wish that his normal form limit burst also came with the LB damage boost. You have to get his Brave Shift to get the LB damage boost though, and so it's a little bit awkward because you have to do, if you want the stat buffs, you got to do his normal form LB, and then the following turn switch over to his Brave Shift to then get the LB damage boost. But it is a 300% LB damage boost for 5 turns, which is quite nice. And then and his Brave Shift LB also comes with 150% human and machine killers for all allies for 5 turns, and so that's actually quite nice on a support unit. Some of his other support skills, he does get this nice 6.5% morale gen that you can do. A lot of support units for Clash of Wills have abilities like these with the 6.5% morale gen, so it's nice that they added that to his kit as a part of an upgrade. He does have this nice ability. I have not upgraded it fully, so that's why you're seeing the lower HP barrier and the fewer turns on the stat parameter resistance. If you have this upgraded fully, it's a 7,000 HP barrier for 5 turns, and the parameter reduction resistance and the stop charm resistance goes up to 5 turns, and that can actually be quite useful for a lot of trials, because a lot of trials, and especially like Clash of Wills, the bosses are going to throw breaks at you, and so that's a nice ability to have in the kit for a support unit. He also has the ice imbues and the water imbues for the team, which also come with a little bit of amps to them. The amps aren't great, but if you have his EX3 ability, if you have him at EX3, this actually makes those ice and water amps, or sorry, it makes those amps go up to 45%, which is quite nice, and for 5 turns. And so this has full uptime because it's a 5-turn cooldown. And so the ice and water amps are up for 45% for 5 turns, and those are non-dispellable, so you don't have to worry about them being dispelled. Also comes with the nice killers, 160% for 5 turns, but that's only 10% more than his Brave Shift LB. You're really wanting this one for those ice and water amps more than anything. And those are really just the big, those are the big things that he can bring. He's pretty bulky on spirit, which is really nice because in a lot of cases you can evade physical attacks, but unavoidable magic damage can oftentimes hurt. You take this most recent Clash of Wills, for example, against Big George. There are a lot of uncoverable magic attacks, and Yoshikiri would be able to tank those reasonably well. Now, Yoshikiri was not really a suitable unit for this particular Clash of Wills because you're not taking ice or water into this particular trial, but had ice or water been one of those weak elements, then Yoshikiri might have actually seen some more use. So, he's not the best support unit on the list, but he does have some niche use, and if you have him at EX3, he's actually a fairly good support unit. I will show just real quick that intrinsic ability that he got. It is a special, let's see, a special cooldown, I believe, wasn't it? Wasn't it a special cooldown? Let's see, let me just do BA start, B, I'll just do B. There it is, BA start. And so this is the ability that he got. The only thing that sucks is that it's a single target. It would have been nice if this was AoE, even though it's only 2 turns on a 5 turns cooldown. This would have been so great if this was AoE, with the 400% full buff, 300% LB damage boost, and the human and machine killers at 200%. I don't think it would have been a stretch to make this AoE. It wouldn't have been overpowered, I don't think, because we already have some units that do this on their limit bursts, and so it's like, why not just make this AoE? But anyways, it can be useful in certain situations, and that's really all I have to say about Yoshikiri. I honestly, personally, don't use him that much, but he does have some uses, and I'm hoping I'll have a reason to use him at some point in the future. So Starlight Elena is one of those comeback stories that I don't think anyone really saw coming, but her intrinsic ability that she got a while ago really brought her back from nothing. Even when she first hit the scene, when she first came out, as one of the first global exclusive Neovisions, along with Yoshikiri, she honestly wasn't all that impressive compared to the other units in the meta. Like, she didn't break the meta or anything like that. She was reasonably strong on her release. She was certainly doing good damage, but she fell off very, very quickly. And honestly, she never really made it back. Even when they sort of gave her some upgraded abilities for Clash of Wills, like they made her Brave Shift limit burst, scale with morale, and that was kind of something, right? But even then, it wasn't really enough. You see, it definitely got up to a 585 times modifier. It's definitely nothing to shake to shake your head at, but it just wasn't quite enough. This was the era where Skye was still dominating, and yeah, she just wasn't living up to the expectations. Then came her intrinsic ability, Hidden Power. This thing just absolutely made her broken. And the reason why is this part of it right here. 2,000 static attack and mag, that's nice, but this really just, added 400 times modifier to all of these abilities, and most notably to her Gemini Blade and Star Supernova. And, it just made those abilities hit like a truck. Triple casting Gemini Blade with the Hidden Power ability is like doing, one of Esther's LBs. It was just like insane how much damage she could put out, and so she definitely makes the list of one of my top units for that purpose, because she's very easy to build. She's been around for a while, so you probably have some lying around, and the hidden power, that intrinsic ability, is free. You should have it. Equip that to her, and she will just absolutely melt through trials and bosses. She still doesn't have, she doesn't have really a place in Clash of Wills for ranking. You don't really see her in high ranking clears because her morale damage just isn't there. And even with that intrinsic ability, she's not doing enough damage to really, meet the level needed to cap in most Clash of Wills events. However, she is still very, very useful in a lot of cases just for clearing Clash of Wills bosses. And so she's definitely more of like a trial-friendly unit, getting through trial content and things like that. She's not going to be your big hitter in Dark Visions or in Clash of Wills. She's more of a just churning out consistent damage as opposed to bursting it out. But for that reason, I think she's a really great unit to have, and she's definitely worth spending the resources. And if you have her at EX3, she gets the really nice ability Celestial Brilliance that does a 150 demon and human killer for all allies, and it does a 25% sword imperil, which is nice. And it also gives her herself, unfortunately, not the whole team, but it gives herself 50% water and light amp, which is really, really nice and very useful if you're going up against a boss that's weak to water or light. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about her. You're really only going to use her to chain Gemini Blade and Star Supernova to just basically blast through trial content and things like that. All right. So Louise is, she was the first, along with Ling, she was the first Clash of Wills unit to be released, and she stood the test of time for quite a while. She was useful in a lot of Clash of Wills, especially during the gun meta, when basically everyone was using equip gun on their top damage dealers to get the maximum variance. I even used a gun on my Skye for a long time because the gun variance was just so great. And so Louise really stood the test of time for that reason alone for quite a while, but she has a lot of really neat support skills in her kit. Besides that, she really is the only unit that has an on-demand full uptime 35% gun imperil still. So you could say Laguna has that as well, but you need him to be EX3 to maintain his SLB, and you only get that at you get that at turn 3. But Louise can basically start right off the bat with that, so she still has that going for her. But she has a lot of other neat support skills in her kit. Firestarter is still useful for a fire damage field if you need it. She's got Diverse Arsenal is still a very useful skill if you don't have all of the support units with the killers. This can be very, very useful because it has an Omni Killer, and you see it starts at 50%, but the next turn, and for the next 2 turns after the turn this is cast, it goes up to 100% killers, and that's to all races, and that can be very, very useful for slot efficiency. She's not going to be dealing a whole heap of damage, but she does have morale scaling damage in her kit, mostly in her Brave Shift form. Her Limit Burst is, it's not particularly strong. You can see, her normal Limit Burst is dreadful, even with her intrinsic ability, which gives her that Limit Burst. It gives her a Limit Burst boost. It's not really going to help her normal Limit Burst. It does help this one a little bit more, but you have to ramp this one up. But neither one of those are morale scaling, so you're not really going to be using those very much. And here's the skill that does the on-demand gun imperil for 35% for 3 turns. That's very, very handy. And yeah, and so she still has a bit of fight left in her, I think. She still can definitely see use in certain situations, especially when you need those killers, but you don't have the units, or you don't want to bring 2 different units for the killers that match up. Because a lot of trials in well, I shouldn't say trials, a lot of the like Clash bosses and Dark Visions bosses are now multiracial, and so you need, you know, 2 different killers. So Louise still has a little bit of use, but she's not the best, which is why she's, you know, near the bottom of the list. Olivera is another one of those sort of rags to riches stories. You know, very similar to Starlight Elena. When Olivera first came out, he was very underwhelming. His damage was paltry. You know, the best thing he had going for him was like a Team Dark amp, but it didn't even come with an imbue, and so he was a little awkward, and yeah, he fell off pretty much right from the start. But then Olivera got his intrinsic ability, peak crescendo, and wow, did this guy, I mean, tons of killers. He got chain cap, he didn't get chain cap, sorry, he got chain damage boost. It's important to make the distinguish between that. But yeah, he got, you know, tons of flat mag and MP, and you know, as you know, he uses MP in his Brave Shift form in place of magic, and so he got all of these really nice things, and that, along with the Dazzling Demoness card, he really became a powerhouse. So it's sort of a combination of those 2 things, right? The Dazzling Demoness card, which I don't have personally, so I can't show you here, but the combination of the Dazzling Demoness card plus his intrinsic ability made him a really, really strong unit. And so he really sort of, you know, came back and bounced back. Now, with that being said, he is a dark locked mage, and so, you know, pretty much he's just here to do his limit burst, which is, you know, a 4 parts. It's basically a quad cast. What is it? Chaos Wave Awakened, but it's all dark element, and so it's important to keep that in mind. He's really only useful in situations where you are going to be doing dark elemental damage. He cannot be imbued, so it's literally just dark. You can't like imbue him with something else and, you know, and go from there. But he is still really useful because his Brave Shift form, where he teams up with his sister Reberta, is a tag chaining limit burst, and this is the one that scales off his MP as opposed to his mag, like in his normal form. And so if you have the Dazzling Demoness card and his intrinsic ability, his MP sort of goes through the roof, and he starts, you know, dealing some considerable damage. And so if you're struggling for a dark elemental mage, then you know, Olivera is definitely a unit worth going for. It is important to know that his Brave Shift Limit Burst does not have morale scaling. So if you're taking him into Clash of Wills, you're strictly going to be using his normal form Limit Burst for the morale boost. But the cool thing about his Limit Burst being 4 parts is that if you use abilities like, you know, Tyvis's Spirit or the Vision card, what's it called? A Cool Smile that adds modifier boosts to the LBs. As long as it says in there that, you know, it modifies LBs with morale scaling, then he will quadruple dip on those modification boosts, and that can really make him very, very powerful in Clash of Wills as well. So he's really seen a resurgence, and so he definitely makes my list of top 20 units. Cressnik, man, definitely one of my favorite units, and one of those units that I think was underrated big time when the banner came out. You know, at that time, healers had largely fallen out of the meta. Nobody needed healers for anything anymore because you had tanks, and tanks tanked all the damage. And so, you know, as long as you could keep your tank topped up with, usually with some kind of regen skill. The tanks usually had some regen skill in their kit or something like that, or the tanks were just so absurdly tanky that you didn't need to heal them anyways. And so healers really didn't have much use at all. And so a lot of people thought, oh, well, what are we going to do with the healer? But man, he is so much more. And he is honestly, for Clash of Wills, Cressnik, despite dealing really like no damage, he has some damage skills in his kit, but you're never going to use them. Despite dealing no damage, this guy can make a huge difference in the damage output in Clash of Wills, and that is of course because of his Brave Shift skills, most notably Arcane Stimulant, which is a flat 10% or 1,000 as they state it here, and then it does that every single turn. And so he just has, he's got all these skills that basically do all of these every turn recasting skills, like the morale fill. He's got this, which, that takes care of your parameter reductions, your status ailments, it takes care of all those resistances. And that auto casts every turn in his Brave Shift, even once he's out of his Brave Shift. As long as you've cast it during his Brave Shift, he'll just keep casting it until he dies. He's got, this is huge, elemental imperil removal on demand. Like that is a really important skill to have it in the kit. Plus he comes with 80% across the board elemental resistance boosts, and it will recast those resistance boosts at a lower level, but it recasts those 60% every turn, and so it's kind of a nice safety net to have that in your kit. And then when he's not in his Brave Shift, because it is a trance shift, unfortunately, but when he's not in his Brave Shift, he's still got all these very, very useful skills. He's doing some healing, which, in certain cases, you do need heals. In Clash of Wills, they have done a good job of sort of necessitating healers again, because, a lot of the bosses now are doing uncoverable damage of some kind, whether it be physical or magical, and so your units are going to take some damage at some point during the fight. And a lot of bosses these days are doing, when you pass the threshold, it does like a 99% gravity damage, and you got to quickly heal your team back up, but your team, but your heals are reduced by 90%, and so in that case, having a healer like Cressnik can be very, very useful. And in his normal form, he's still got the on-demand imperil removal, which is huge. One of his most unique skills is, of course, the Shining Siphon, and this has been used to great effect to basically nullify physical damage, incoming physical damage, for 3 turns, because this actually imbues the boss or the enemies with light element. And so then you can just build your team for light resistance. The first turn, your team will actually absorb the light elemental damage. And then after that, for 2 more turns after that, you'll just have to make sure your team is fully light resistant. But it's like huge. I mean, Cressnik has been used to cheese so many Clash of Wills bosses using that Shining Siphon skill. It's like, it's just amazing. And so, I went all in for Cressnik when he first came out, because I knew he was going to be extremely useful. At that time I was having a huge problem generating morale, because I didn't have a lot of the Clash of Wills units early on, and so I could not generate enough morale to like deal effective damage when in the early Clash of Wills. So when Cressnik came out, I jumped on him, and yeah, I mean he's been on pretty much all of my rank 1 clears. I think he has been indispensable for Clash of Wills. Outside of Clash of Wills, not as useful. You could probably use him in some trials where you need imperil removal and things like that, but he's really almost strictly a Clash of Wills unit. But man, is he useful in Clash of Wills. If you have Cressnik on the team, you're almost guaranteed you're going to hit 200% morale for your burst turn, and that can be a huge damage increase. So that's why he's on my top 20. Skye. Oh my gosh. So, Skye was the second Clash of Wills unit and was responsible for my very first rank 1 in Clash of Wills during that event against Asta the Undead Dragon. It was, she was so incredibly overpowered. Like, she was a broken unit from day one, and this is in Clash of Wills, of course, because her modifier, her limit burst modifier, it's a 2-part modifier, and so it takes advantage of things like Tyvis's spirit. You know, you can use it to take advantage of Sylvie's Brave Shift limit burst for the extra mod boost, and so she can become quite powerful. But you see, I mean, her you know, her modifier was just insane. It was so high. I mean, it was a 705 times modifier, which at that time was just like bonkers. Like, when they announced it, I shat a brick. I was like, are you kidding? A 705 times modifier? Like, this is just stupid. She's gonna break the game. And she did. I mean, I took a bunch of trash NVA units into Asta the Undead Dragon and got a rank 1 because of her. She capped that boss all by herself. And that's how broken she was. And so she has been a mainstay in Clash of Wills for a long time. And this only got better with her recent intrinsic ability, which cured one of the biggest problems with her, which was having very low attack compared to other units. Now, she was still dealing, you know, oftentimes more damage in Clash of Wills than units with higher attack because her modifier was so huge. But this cured the problem of having a low attack by adding 2,000 static attack. It also gave her a ton of killers, so she caps out, you know, Beast, Insect, Dragon, and Reaper killer super easy. And that's just huge. So she became very powerful again. She went from, you know, she started off when she came first, when she first hit the scene, she was like number 1. She was number 1 in Clash of Wills for a long time. And then she kind of fell off. And then, you know, when the intrinsic ability came back, she went from like maybe, you know, rank 8 or 9 back up to rank 1 very quickly. You know, she just blasted the competition. She also has a little bit of a resurgence outside of Clash of Will, now that we've introduced some Dragoon gear. So, you know, this first came from Ricard and Wyvern, which, you know, adds 30 times modifier boost to jump abilities. Now, the unique thing about Skye, because, you know, when Skye first came out, Dragoons were almost all true dual wield. You wanted to make your jumpers wield 2 weapons for the express purpose that would deal double damage. It would actually hit twice. And so when Skye came out, they didn't want people to, you know, have to build her dual wield, because she was supposed to be a TDH unit, a true dual hand, or true double hand. Sorry, she was supposed to be a TDH unit for her limit burst in Clash of Wills, and they didn't want you to have to do her dual wield. And so they made her jump, which is her normal attack, by the way. They made her jump hit 2 times. And so that effectively was supposed to make her equivalent to other Dragoons at the time. Now, her modifier was still too low compared to some of the other Dragoons out there, so, you know, she wasn't doing, you know, top tier jump damage. However, now, with her intrinsic ability, plus equipment like Dragoon Helm and the Vision card from Ricard and Wyvern, plus the new Kimari that just came out and the new Berserker Rikku that just came out. If you throw all of this gear on her, her jump damage just like shoots through the roof. Her jump modifier goes up to something like 400 times because she double dips on every single jump modifier boost that you give her. So that 30 times modifier boost on Dragoon Helm is actually 60 times. The 40 times modifier on this Vision card is actually 80 times. So her jump damage goes through the roof. She is the strongest Dragoon in this game, as long as you give her all of those jump modifier boosts. And keep in mind, her jump is wind locked, but her Her limit burst, of course, is not, and that's what made her highly desirable. The fact that you could imbue her limit burst with any element in Clash of Wills, highly, highly desirable to have a non-elemental limit burst that you can imbue. But her jump is locked to wind element, so do keep that in mind. However, even being locked to wind, she's still, even going off element, she's still dealing insane damage. As long as wind isn't, you know, completely resisted or absorbed or anything like that, she's still dealing some really significant damage with her jump. So yeah, so Skye has, you know, she's always been sort of a top tier unit, and now she's just even better these days. So she is a great unit. If you get her, you are lucky, and definitely put some resources into making her the best unit that she can be. Now, Wylk is one of those sort of unfortunate units that got the premium treatment that maybe, I don't know, arguably he didn't deserve to be a premium unit. And he, you know, especially when Chizuru came out a few weeks later and basically blew him out of the water. Yeah, he was the first victim of Chizuru when Chizuru hit. And it's really sad because he didn't really have much time to shine except for that one Clash of Wills where he was featured. And yeah, I mean, he was bonkers for that one. You know, you could use him to basically destroy the Clash of Wills boss at that time. But yeah, other than that, you know, he fell off rather quickly. He does still shine in events like Dark Visions, where his 90% defense break comes in handy, because he does have a 90% defense break. It's a little awkward, and then it needs to be charged up, and you have to equip his, oh, let me see, let me shift over here, and you have to equip his STMR in order to get that up on turn 2. I think it was this one. Is it rocks? One of these charges up. Oh yeah, there we go. So this fills up his Magnus ability, which then comes with the 90% defense break. It also deals a considerable amount of damage, so with morale scaling, and so that was pretty nice. And then of course his limit burst has the nice extreme Nova frame, so he can chain with Esther, and so, you know, he's not a bad unit at all. He's actually very, very strong, very, very competent on wind teams and on earth teams. He's not locked to any element either, so you could use him for any team if you want. You know, if you got Sylvie and you want to run a lightning team with Esther, he's definitely a good unit to have. The problem is being premium. It's hard to acquire shards for him unless you just like went all in on his banner and you pulled a bunch of them. He's one of those difficult units to get the resources for. You know, with that said, he's basically living in my shard dungeon team. I only pulled one of them, and then I got his VIP shards in the VIP shop as soon as they became available, and so I have him EX1. I moogled his STMR so that I could use him, so I could get that 90% defense break on turn 2. But yeah, I mean, he suffers the issue of being a premium unit, which just makes it difficult to acquire the resources needed to really enhance him. But if you have him, he is definitely a great unit. He's really strong. He just got overshadowed by Chizuru big time, because Chizuru's got a lot more going on for her. So Kaktiria is arguably still one of the best breakers in this game, and you know, she's got a lot going on in her kit. When she first came out, she was kind of trying to be this breaker that also dealt some damage, but her damage was never really all that great. She eventually got some upgrades that gave her morale scaling to her damage abilities, but even then, they were pretty sad. I mean, you look at some of the modifiers on like Oasis Retribution, And it's like, yeah, okay, you can triple cast 950 times. Modifier, it's, you know, I think it comes out to something like, you know, 2,800 times modifier, and that's at full morale, and that's just, yeah, it's just not enough to really be competitive. But I mean, you know, don't let me undersell her. She's still a really great unit. You know, some of her abilities like Million Needle Assault are really nice for clearing content. Especially in Clash of Wills. I use her all the time for my clear only guides in Clash of Wills, because she is such a superb unit for keeping your unit safe with this 90% attack and mag break. And then of course she's got the 89% single use Magnus skills, where, you know, for a 5-turn break of any one of these skills at 89%. And then she can basically maintain 87% full break on her LB. You know, indefinitely, because it's for 5 turns, and her LB is very easy to fill. She also has a Fist Imperil that's 30% on her, I think it's her normal form LB. 35% on her LB, and then the 30% one is just an on-demand skill in Thorny Teamwork. This skill is also really great for water and earth protection, with 150% resistance buffs for the team. So she's got a lot of really cool support skills. She can also imbue the team if you want. She doesn't do amps for the team, unfortunately, but she can imbue the team, and has fairly decent imperils to water and earth. And so in a pinch, those can be really, really handy. And so, you know, using her together with like Sylvie on an Earth team is really cool, and you can do a lot with that. So she's actually a very, very useful unit as a breaker. And that's, I'm going to be honest, that's really her strength, is just her breaks. Her water and earth imperils can come in handy for certain. But yeah, she's not doing a whole lot else for the team, but she does those things very, very well, and that's why she makes my top 20 list. Now, staying on track with breakers, Kaito, man, this guy is, I think it's safe to say that he is the best breaker in the game, mostly because not only does he do breaks very, very well, he does them very, very well, especially in Clash of Wills, but also outside of Clash of Wills. But he's got so much going on in his kit, and so many support skills. He's like a Swiss Army knife in Clash of Wills, and even outside of Clash of Wills, he's got some very neat uses, and he deals pretty decent damage inside of Clash of Wills. He's definitely not a top tier damage dealer, but he is, you know, for a unit that's mainly a breaker, he does do some decent damage. And against machine bosses, because his normal form limit burst is most effective against machines, you know, that can be very, very useful. And the fact that his limit burst has 2 parts means he can double dip on abilities like Tyvis's Spirit. He can double dip on things like Sylvie's limit burst buff. He can double dip on what is it? That other one that's on Reagan's Reagan the Return, the presidential livery. Yeah, so that he can use that one as well. He has to be in his Brave Shift form to use that one though, because it's for breakers only, and he's technically not a breaker in his normal form. But that's fine, it's easy enough to get around. And so this can actually deal some considerable damage if you use, you know, mod boosts to double up and to double dip on that. He is, of course, a water specialist, and man, is he good at water. He's got the Pure Liquid Infusion, which is useful for imbuing the team with water if you want to do a water team. And then he's got the... which one is this one's the one that does the buff, so you can give everybody 45% amp to water. You can only use this one twice, which, you know, kind of stinks, but in Clash of Wills typically you're going to do 2 bursts anyways, and so, you set it up for your burst turns. This skill also is useful in that it converts all water damage to heals, and if you saw my Clash of Wills rank 1 clear, I actually used this to great effect to help my team survive some of the turns where the uncoverable magic damage was water elemental, and so it turned it into heals, which made surviving that battle much easier. So this can actually be very, very useful. He's got 4 different killers in his kit for the entire team at 150%. Machine and Dragon on this one, which also comes with 55% damage reduction. Now it's physical damage reduction, but still, that's huge. 55% damage reduction for Machine and Dragons, and that comes with a 4-stack Mirage for the whole team for 5 turns and a 7,500 HP berry. I mean, it's like insane. They just like overloaded this guy with all these support skills. And then on this side, he's got the Demon and Fairy killer buffs with the Demon and Fairy damage reduction, and it's just like it just like keeps going. He's got all these like neat little things in his kit. And he even buffs morale. A lot of his abilities will generate morale, which is huge for Clash of Wills. And in his Brave Shift form, where you get his proper breaks, he's got a 90% attack and mag break that is fairly easy to keep up and running at all times, 88% defense and spirit breaks, which are pretty easy to maintain at all times, 30% katana imperil, 140% water imperil. I mean, this guy is just like, he's got so much going on for him, and it's just like overloaded. And he can maintain 85% AoE breaks, and let's see, what's this one just does the killers. Yeah, so I wonder if I can get to a torrential. I want to show you all the morale skills that he has that are just like insane. This is just his damage skills. Where is torrential downpour? Like this is just stupid. I mean, this alone would have been worth the pull. Like if he had nothing else but some breaks and like this ability, like people would have pulled their brains out for this guy. But he's got so much else going on. But like 200% killers to 4 different races for the whole team for 3 turns with a 50% accuracy reduction. I mean, it's insane, and all you have to do is have 100% or better morale. It's crazy. Now that's only useful in Clash of Wills, of course, but that is huge. Even outside of Clash of Wills, the 150% buffs to all of those is just like totally broken. But then he comes in with like abilities like Crashing Wave that do a perfect dispel on bosses for 3 turns every turn, and breaks at 88%, and it's just like, I don't know, he's got all these crazy skills, and the uniqueness of these skills, Unpredictable Tide, which can basically remove buffs from a boss that are undispellable as long as they last for 3 turns or less, which is, I mean, that is pretty huge too. And then this one, which increases breaks and imperils for 3 extra turns. Like these little unique skills. I don't know. Kaito, I know I'm just kind of babbling here because he's got so much going on, and he is such an amazing unit for Clash of Wills. He's got 90% defense and spirit breaks as long as you have 150% or higher morale. He's got 25% all weapon imperils. He's got 125% all elemental imperils. Both of those skills, again, you have to have 150% or higher morale to get those. But things like that are just insane, that just make him so useful. And he's really sort of like he's a very slot efficient unit. That's probably the best way to describe him, is he is the epitome of slot efficiency. And so that's why he makes my top 20 list. So Runda is the only non-global exclusive unit on my top 20 list, and for good reason. He is just a bonkers physical tank. And I'm still amazed that he is a free unit. You can get him to EX3 for free just by playing the Season 4 story, which you can start at any time. You don't have to get through the first 3 seasons first to get him. You can get him as a brand new player. You can go ahead and start Season 4 and acquire Runda, and you can get him to EX3 for free just by playing through the story. And this unit is just so bonkers. He doesn't do very much. He's got very little in his kit that you need to worry about. You're using him strictly for his limit burst, which has an 80% general mitigation, 80% physical mitigation, and it fills everybody's LB by 10, which is kind of nice. And then starting on turn 3, you get his super limit burst, which bumps that up to 85% general mit and 85% physical mitigation, and fills everyone's LB by 30, which is, and that at EX3, once you get him EX3, that's full uptime on those mitigations. That is massive. It's like no other unit in the game comes close to supplying that kind of mitigation with full uptime. It is just insane. He is such a great unit, and on top of that, he's insanely bulky. You can see the equipment that I've given him. I'm not giving him super STMR, premium unit STMRs or anything like that. I'm not giving him anything, stupid crazy, and he's easily hitting over 50,000 HP, 7,000 defense, and it's just wild. This guy, yeah. I love this little robot. He can triple BS chain, and that's an AoE chain, which is really great. So he can chain with a lot of different people, because Bolting Strike is definitely the favorite chain family, especially for global exclusive units. And so he can chain with everybody. He can do on-demand attack and mag breaks, which is nice in a pinch if you don't have better breaks than that. On top of all that, he's a physical tank, and he will tank until the cows come home. This little dude will tank just about anything. It's very, very hard to kill Runda. And just as a nice little bit of icing on the cake, he does have 100% elemental buffs to ice, wind, and dark. So if you happen to need those in the fight that you're going up against, he's got them ready for you. So yeah, he's nice because he doesn't do much. He does one thing, and he does it really, really well, and no one even comes close to doing it as well as he does. So Runda definitely makes my top 20. Now, on the subject of tanks, Maeve is one of my favorites because she can basically do both for you. She can be your physical tank in her normal form, or she can be your mag tank in her Brave Shift form. Now, one of the downsides is she doesn't have a lot of HP. It's hard to get her HP up there. You can if you use a vision card that has a lot of HP on it, like Power Cut or something like that. You can still get her up to 40 or 50,000 HP. But she's still very, very bulky in most situations, especially once you get her up to EX3. She becomes incredibly bulky, but she is also great because she has a lot of other cool skills in her kit. So she's very great she's really good for Clash of Wills, because she does have, the hunting call. So she's, one of those rare cases where, you have a tank that can actually fill morale on demand. She also has an AoE Earth Imbue with a 30% amp on it. That's very, very nice if you're going up against a boss where you can use Earth Element and you don't have another, maybe you don't have room for an Imbue, Imperil, and an amp. So that can be very, very nice. She's got really high mitigations on her cover. She's really effective against beast and dragon enemies because she comes with a lot of typed mitigations to beast and dragons. If you're going up against a beast or a dragon in Clash of Wills and you have 150% or higher morale, she also can provide 150% killers to those two races in Clash of Wills. She's also really nice because she kind of has she's got some nice support skills in her kit, like parameter reduction resistance, status ailment resistance, stop and charm resistance, and she can also provide 50% general mitigation to the team. She can deal a little bit of damage. It's not, you know, it's not big damage in her normal form. It's a defense scaling limit burst, one hit finisher. It deals, you know, the problem is she's hard to build for LB damage, and so it's possible that she could be the difference between, you know, hitting the damage cap or not in Clash of Wills. So it's nice to have that option, but that's not what she's really here for. But the nice thing about her normal limit burst is that it also does a 5-stack Mirage to the team. She also has a cooldown skill that does 5 stacks of Mirage in Wild Guard. And so she's got a couple of different sources of Mirage, which can be very, very useful, especially when you're dealing with bosses that have accuracy or that reduce your evasion. Mirage is still going to save your life in those instances. In her Brave Shift form as a magic tank, she's got LB fill, which is very, very nice for the team. You know, she can chain bolting strike in both forms. However, in her Brave Shift form, it is Earth Elemental, whereas in her normal form, it is non-elemental and can be imbued. So keep that in mind. She can provide insanely big barriers in Clash of Wills if you have your morale up. So like 19,000 HP barrier on this cooldown skill, or on her Brave Shift limit burst, it goes up to a 25,000 HP barrier if you have 200% morale. So that's pretty huge. That can save your life in a pinch. And so I think she's actually a really, really great unit. I don't think she gets used enough, to be honest. I try to use her whenever I can, both in and out of Clash of Wills. She's got a lot of useful skills, and that's why she makes my top 20. Now, of course, we can't talk about tanks and not talk about Chow. Now, I know I said I would try not to talk about like time-limited units, and you know, for the most part, I've strayed away from doing time-limited units in this, you know, in this ranking system. But you know, Chow is a special case because he is. He's pretty ubiquitous in Clash of Wills, mostly thanks to his broken morale generation. And so I think he needs to be talked about because he is a really great unit. And we did just get a banner over the anniversary where you could potentially have pulled Chow, and they might do similar banners in the future where you can pull limited time units. And so I think it's worth mentioning that Chow is a really great unit. He's a great magic tank, of course. He's insanely bulky. He's got a lot of great support skills in his kit. You know, he's got like the break resistance, you know, status ailment resistances. He generates a lot of morale with those abilities as well. And of course, you know, one of the tricks that makes him broken is by equipping him with counter gear like blizzard orbs and things like that. And then, you know, his counter attack not only heals your party, but it also generates 100 morale for every time he counters. And so, you know, if he takes a lot of magic damage, then, you know, that's going to generate a crap ton of morale. And you've probably already seen this in Clash of Wills videos. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why he is so widely used, and frankly, it's what makes him great as a unit. I will say that he also does some respectable damage in his Brave Shift form if you can gear him, because he can gear for pretty high spirit, and his limit burst, while it looks like it has a pretty low modifier at 200% morale at 350, he does have a skill that will buff that by an extra 150. Let's see, here it is, yep, by an extra 150. So that's a 500 times modifier. It is locked to the light element, but it comes with it comes with the light imperil the staff imperil, and so it can be useful. He can be very, very useful for dealing some side damage while he's also being your tank and your morale generator. Outside of Clash of Wills, he's useful if you need a strong magic tank. Obviously, he's still going to be great as a magic tank, but his damage isn't really going to be doing much for you outside of Clash of Wills. He is very, very unique, of course, in the fact that he does have an Omni cover. And this is very, very rare in this game, especially units that can maintain their Omni cover indefinitely. And Chow is one of the only ones that can really easily maintain his Omni cover indefinitely, because even though it only lasts for 2 turns, his LB gauge is only 40 crysts, so it's very easy to refill. And yeah, I mean, it's actually got really good damage reduction on it for an Omni cover at 60%. That's actually quite high. Like, the next best is Esther, and her highest is 50%, on her Brave Shift LB. Her on-demand one is 40%. And so this Omni cover is probably the best Omni cover that we have available. And so if you need an Omni cover unit and you have Chow, well, there you go. You've got yourself a really, really great tank. But he is a time limited unit, so you're just going to pull him randomly on some random banner. You have to get him on a limited time banner. All right, but he still definitely deserves to be in the top 20. Reberta. So she's right up there as like one of my favorite characters in the game. She's pretty close to Esther and Sylvie as far as units, as far as characters that I really enjoy from this game. And she was one of those 5 stars that I pulled when she first came out back in the day with her 5-star form, and she really helped me clear a lot of content back in the day, because she was really strong when she first came out. And then she fell off pretty quick. But her Neovision form definitely is one of the best units in the game. There's so much support that she has in her kit, and she can actually deal respectable damage, mostly in Clash of Wills. Outside of Clash of Wills, her damage really isn't anywhere near the top of the charts, but it's still respectable enough, and she brings enough support to the team that you still might want to bring her into, certainly into trials or into dark visions. But she is great for a fire team, because she has this nice sort of all-in-one imperil and imbue and 45% amp for fire, all in one skill, which is really great. She can triple cast that with some her other skills like support from the skies, which does a 300% full buff, and a 5-stack mirage for the team, which is really great. She can do some LB fill with Draconic Triune. You can only use it twice, but it does a 40 LB Crist for all allies. And it even comes with some extra amps for ice and lightning. So if you have somebody that's, imbuing either of those elements, but maybe their amps aren't that strong, she can help out by amping up those two really easily. And she can also remove Stop, Charm, and Berserk, which is really great from your team. It only gets 2 uses, but oftentimes that's all you need. She also has Imperil removal. It's on a cooldown, but in a pinch this can be really, really helpful, and even comes with 120% fire, ice, and lightning resistance buffs, plus a 10,000 HP barrier. She's got some really nice support skills in her kit. Dragon's Blood is kind of an interesting one. This can be useful in certain scenarios where maybe you need to remove an imbue from your team. I actually used this to great effect going up against, oh man, I can't remember who it was now that I used it to, I want to say it was the Demon Belphegor, and I used this ability to get rid of the imbue, because Belphegor, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it. Belphegor imbues your team with earth. And so, I use her to just quickly cleanse that. It does dispel everything, so it is like a reset the board kind of skill. But in a pinch, that can be very, very useful if you're able to sort of reset all your buffs. And like I said, you can use this skill and then Inferno Breath in the next cast and sort of re-up your team's fire amp and everything. It does also have an enemy dispel, so if you need to dispel the enemy for any reason on demand, you can do that. And then the biggest thing about her is she's one of 3 units that are what we call sort of the killer support units that bring 150% killers for the whole team to certain races. And so she, of course, does dragon killers. She also does aquatic killers, which is a rare one, insect killers, which is another rare one, and then stone killers. So she can provide 150% killers to those 4 races for the entire team on demand, and they last for 5 turns. She can also fill some morale, which is very, very nice for Clash of Wills. On top of that, she's also a competent damage dealer. So by using Mega Breath, you can boost the modifier to her skill Mystic Breath, which is a chaining skill. It's a tag chain skill, and it's in its own family. So Mystic Breath gets its own family. What's really awesome about this chain family is that it chains with just about anything. Like, it's insane how many different chain families will weave with this without breaking. I have chained Esther's Extreme Nova Frame LB with this. If you quad cast Mystic Breath with Esther's LB, it will perfect chain. So the chain does not break. It is amazing. It also chains very well with Triple Bolting Strike, which is another really popular one. This chain family is so unique in its ability to just chain with other chain families. And even if you don't have it, even if you don't have anybody to chain with, that's okay. She just tag chains it up, and you can have a finisher just drop their one-hit finisher somewhere in that chain, and boom, you're good to go. And it also has a really good modifier in Clash of Wills. So you see it goes all the way up to 945. You add another 120 onto that by using Mega Breath beforehand. And so if you quad cast that, which you can quad cast that, it ends up being like a 4,000 times modifier or something like that, which is really impressive. So she can actually dish out some great damage in Clash of Wills. Outside of Clash of Wills, her main damage comes from being a Dragoon. So she does have a jump skill. Unfortunately, it's not all that strong. So most of the other Dragoons in the game are going to outcompete Reberta, but she does come with the benefit of being a non-elemental jumper. So you can imbue her. You can imbue her with any element, and she has some skills that will also buff the modifier on her jump. She's also really easy to build. She is a dual wield naturally. However, she has the 6 times chain cap without having to dual wield. So you can actually build her TDH as long as you have gear to max out her TDH, and she still gets the 6 times chain cap innately without any extra chain cap boost. So that's actually very, very convenient. But yeah, I mean, her support skills along with her damage in Clash of Wills actually make her one of the best units in the game right now. Ling. So Ling is the perfect example of why support units stand the test of time over damage dealers. Ling came out at the first Clash of Wills along with Louise. And boy, is she still useful in so many different scenarios. Ling has so much going on for her, so much going on in her kit. She was the first of the killer support units, meaning she has 4 different killers in her kit, 150% killers for the whole team for 5 turns. Actually, I think hers are only for 3 turns. Let me check that. Yep. So they're only for 3 turns, but still. 150% beast killer, 150% human killer, machine killer, and reaper killer. And those are on demand. They are triple castable. And so she was the first to sort of bring those killers into the meta. And But man, she's got so much else going on in her kit. She's got Mirage for the team, 4 stacks on this cooldown ability. She's got 5 stacks on her Brave Shift Limit Burst. And she's got so much LB fill in her kit. Like, Celestial Dance does 30 LB fill for the whole team. Dragon Dancer does 30 LB fill for the whole team. So she's one of those units that can easily fill up everybody's LB, at the drop of a hat if you need her. She does morale fill for the team. She's got so much going on for her kit. She can imbue it, the team with SR chains and Chaos Wave Awaken chains if you need some chainers. And she can actually reach a respectable attack stat. So if you need her to do a little bit of extra side damage, she can do that for you as well. She's got buffs in her normal form. She's got mitigations, so they're not super high mitigations, but in a pinch they can definitely work. So 50% magic, physical, and general mit with a 5,000 HP barrier, which is very cool. She's got 85% full break, which is useful in a pinch. It doesn't have full uptime, but it's very, very useful if you need it. She's got status ailment resistance. Yeah, and she's got lots of cool things in her kit. She's got on-demand 2-stack Mirage if you need that. She's also got the clean movement, which I think is you're not going to see it a whole lot, but in cases where you need to dispel your team, maybe they've got an imbue you need to get rid of, just know that it also dispels the boss. So you have to not only set up all your buffs, but you have to also reset all the boss's debuffs. So do keep that in mind and be careful with that skill in particular. She does have a 25% dagger imperil, which is one of the few dagger imperils that we have in the game. So if we don't have many damage dealers that are doing a lot of or that use daggers a whole lot, but she works really well with like Igni, because Igni of course wants to use his daggers. And so if you have Igni and you like using Igni, then Ling is definitely going to want to be on your team. So yeah, I mean, she's just an incredible support unit. She can also imbue, imperil, and amplify fire and light. The imperils aren't huge; they're only 120, which is below standards these days, but still, in a pinch, can be very, very useful. And the 25% amp, again, it's sort of below standard, but in a pinch, it can still be very, very useful. So she's got a lot going on for her, and so she definitely makes my top 20. So rounding out our killer support units is Bulwark. Bulwark is the last on the list of the killer the killer units, and he has his killers similar to Ling. They're only in the Brave Shift form, and they only last for 3 turns, but he's got killers for birds, for demons, for fairies, and for plants. And so that rounds out the all of the races. So those are your 12 races, right? So you've got Reberta, Ling, and Bulwark. Those are the 3 units that are providing your 150% killers on demand for the team. But he also has a lot of other cool things going on in his kit. He's honestly one of the strongest wind support units, especially in Clash of Wills, because he can do a 60% wind amp for the team with imbue, with a 135% imperil. And so he's very, very useful on wind teams in Clash of Wills, but you can also easily use him on ice teams or dark teams. The imperil's not very big, but it does have a decent amp on it, and it lasts for 5 turns. Same for the dark element. So if you need a unit that's going to imbue your team with either wind, ice, or dark, then Bulwark is your unit. He also has an on-demand AoE re-raise on this skill, which is really useful. You do have to have his LB, at least 20 LB crisps, but he fills his LB by like 30 every turn. So it's like, yeah, it's very easy to get this skill up and running. And so that's kind of nice having that, having that AoE re-raise on his kit. Other than that, he's got some standard morale fill, which is very, very useful. He does some bolting strike chaining. His Brave Shift Limit Burst is actually kind of nice for the the full buffs as well as the HP and MP restoration, and it's percentage wise, but it's still very, very nice and can come in handy on bosses that do heavy MP drains. He also has some nice skills like Electric Ensemble that does a 100% HP and MP restore for the whole team, which is huge. You can only use it twice, but hopefully that's all you really need it for. Hurricane Score. Oh, this is the one that I think does the So, but you have to have your morale higher than 100%. So it's only useful in Clash of Wills. But yeah, if you're going into Clash of Wills against a wind weak boss, Bulwark is going to come in handy for sure. In his normal form, he's probably most notable for people that like to use Golden Riser for this skill, Tonberry Boogie, which makes everybody counter with a 10 times modifier normal attack, which makes Golden Riser hit like a truck. If you've seen any of Wanderer's videos where he basically obliterates everything that's come out in the game with Golden Riser, then you know why this skill is important. But skills like Jaunty Jubilee also work really well in a pinch for like tanks and things like that, or provoke units with the 85% physical and magic reduction and the 100% HP restore. Very, very useful. But yeah, he's there. He's a very bulky unit as well, so he's pretty hard to kill, which is nice in a support unit. And he's been out for a while too, and he still is seeing use in lots of trials, lots of content, lots of Clash of Wills, and so he's going to stand the test of time, and he definitely makes my top 20 list. All right, so maybe a bit of a controversial unit because she is the first global exclusive super limit burst unit, but Olive is, she's incredibly strong. I'll just go ahead and say that she is, she hits like a truck, and she is an imbuable mage, which is very, very useful. Even her normal limit burst, I think Gumi honestly did a good job with her as a super limit burst unit, because even her normal limit burst hits quite hard, and it's not elemental, and it's an imbuable type damage unit, and even her normal LB hits very, very hard. But then her super limit burst is just amazing because it comes with a 90% Spirit Break, 30% Gun Imperil, and it just hits like a truck. Very, very strong. Now you may think, well, the modifier doesn't look very high, but she also gets the benefit of using a store ability. So one of her abilities is to do a 500% mag buff. I think it's this one. Yep. So she gets a 500% mag boost for one use, or sorry, for one ability. So the following ability that she uses after this will have that 500% mag boost, which is an extra 500% on top of your active buff. So it's like a stacking buff, which makes whatever that next hit is, it makes it hit extremely hard. And so her burst on her super limit burst is very, very strong. But she also has some other nice things in her kit, mostly with the on-demand 85% breaks. So she can do 85% breaks on demand for 5 turns with water and light imperils as well. She can also do fire imperils, of course. Fire is probably her strongest element. And she has killers for herself, which is nice. 200% killers for herself. If you have someone like Zahn that can steal them, that's really handy. I wish they were AoE, but that would have just made her very, very overpowered. But she's one of those units that is nice because she's there for one thing, to nuke things from orbit, and she does that very, very well. She's a very simple and easy to use unit, and so as a damage dealer, that's kind of what you want. You don't want them so simple that they have like 2 skills in their kit and that's it. But she's got enough sort of extra support that it still makes her useful, and she's very, very useful in a lot of different situations. She's not element locked, and so that makes her very, very strong in lots of different situations, both in and outside of Clash of Wills. So she definitely deserves to be near the top on this top 20 list. Oh man, Chizuru. Boy, when she came out, she just, she blew everyone's expectations totally out of the water. I mean, she just came out swinging, and boy, did she make a big splash when she came out. Wylk had only been out for maybe like a couple of weeks or something like that, and then Chizuru drops as a non-premium unit and is dealing the same or better damage than a premium unit. A lot of units were quickly outclassed by Chizuru. She broke the ceiling when she came out. I think one of the only global exclusive units that could easily hit 10,000 unbuffed attack. If you get her to EX3, she hits 10,000 attack unbuffed, with relative ease. And so she's an extremely strong unit. Probably the only drawback is that she is a trance shifter. All of her, well, I shouldn't say all of her, but her main damage is, of course, her Brave Shift Limit Burst, which is an Extreme Nova frame. So it chains with units like Esther and Wylk. It's becoming a very popular chain family, especially on limit bursts. Also chains with Olive's super limit burst. But what's neat about it is that it's a tag chain, and so you don't actually need anybody else to chain with her. She can solo DPS a lot of content because her Brave Shift Limit Burst is a tag chain, and so this is very, very useful, and it is a 2-part tag chain as well, which means it double dips on buffs like Tyvis' Spirit. It's also incredibly useful if you have the cool Smile Vision card, because it will double dip on that and give her an extra 100 times modifier. But even just all by itself, it's a 350 times modifier. All by itself, just straight out of the gate, which is like premium level almost, and that's just like insane. And then in Clash of Wills, she's hitting a 600 times modifier at 200% morale, so she's an extremely strong unit. And then on top of that, she comes in with all these great support skills, so she actually can provide killers for 4 different races. So these skills, which do a triple bolting strike chain, give herself a 250% killer, and then gives the team 150% killer. And she has these for beast, for stone, for plant, and for insect. And the team-wide killers last for 10 turns, and the 250% self-buff lasts for 5 turns, which is, it's kind of crazy. She's a top-tier damage dealer that also brings the killer support. It makes her really, really strong. And then she also, on top of all that, she can be a great wind support unit. So if you don't have Bulwark, but you still want to take, wind element into a trial or into a Clash of Wills, well, she can handle that for you. She can imbue the team for 5 turns with a 45% amp. Plus, she brings 140% imperil. Wait, where's the 140%? That's in her Brave Shift. So yeah, so her Brave Shift has which one is it? The 40%. Oh, come on. It's one of these. There it is. So yeah, she does 140% wind imperil. And so she can definitely be your wind support unit if you need her to be. And then she's got all these great little Magnus skills that are great for, you know, little emergency uses. She can give everybody a 400% attack buff with 5 stacks of Mirage for 2 turns. She can also do 85% physical damage for the whole team with a 400% defense buff for 2 turns. You know, you can do a 400% mag buff with an HP barrier. Or you can do a 400% spirit buff with an 85% magic damage. And yeah, I mean, those are all triple castable. You can only use them one time, but they're great for little emergency uses. Also, in an emergency, you can give everybody re-raise for 5 turns with 200 MP restoration. Yeah, she's got a lot going on. Plus, she even fills morale. So some of her skills do like 7.5%. This one, oh, that one doesn't do it, does it? Does Staunch Samurai? No, so it's just Strong Samurai in this form. But I believe it's in her Brave Shift form. Dedicated Samurai. Yeah, this one does 500 plus an extra 100 for every physical attacker on the field, which is just crazy. I mean, it's like she's got so much going on in her kit, plus she's like, you know, a top tier damage dealer all at the same time. And then her normal form Brave Shift is actually really interesting because it does 160% beast and plant killer for 5 turns, which is kind of nice if you need that extra bit of beast or plant killer. But it does this really interesting thing where it adds a morale scaling damage modifier to all these different kinds of damage. And that can go up to 100 times modifier boost. And now this only lasts for 1 turn, so it's kind of like a weird niche ability. I haven't actually used it for any reason, but I'm kind of interested to know in what scenario that might actually be useful. So I'm kind of excited to see when that might actually come up. But yeah, I mean, Chizuru's got so much going on, and she just totally blew everybody out of the water. So she is definitely at the top, you know, near the top of the list. She's in the top 5 for sure. Tsukiko. So when I heard she was coming, you know, I honestly, I wasn't that impressed when I discovered she was going to be an evoker, because evokers have I don't know, they've never really done particularly well in this game, and so I wasn't expecting Gumi to, you know, to make her any better than some of the other evokers that we already have in the game. But man, they sure changed my mind when she came out. She is extremely strong as an evoke unit, but she also the support. And again, if you're seeing a theme here, units with a lot of support in their kit are always going to be at the top of the list, or at least as far as I'm concerned. Support units always fare better and last longer in this game than damage dealers. And so, you know, always try to focus on your support units before, you know, you throw everything at the next flavor of the week as far as damage dealers are concerned, because support units will always carry you farther than your damage dealers will. And Tsukiko is one of those units that's, you know, has so many great support skills in her kit as well. So she's got imperils to fire, light, and earth, obviously specializing in earth, but she's got a rod imperil in her kit, so if you have other mages using rods, then you know, that'll be useful. In Clash of Wills, she's got a 5% morale gen every turn, so this skill basically procs every single turn until, you know, unless she dies, of course, and that's 5% morale every turn. So having that in Clash of Wills is huge. She's got an on-demand imperil removal, which is huge for especially like Clash of Wills and for trials where you have to deal with imperils. She can remove your breaks, stop and charm, remove any status ailments, all while filling morale. She does have magic damage in her normal form, which is, you know, it's not it's not anything to write home about, but it's, you know, it's decently strong. It's more just for chaining than anything. And then let's see, oh, that's just to fill up her, that's not the one I meant to click on. She can imbue and amp the team to earth, fire, and light. So that's a 45% amp to earth. So earth is her strongest element. And so that does an earth imbue with 45% amp. The other two are just 30% to fire and light, but that's very, very handy to have on a unit, especially a damage dealer, to then have that as an extra support. Now her biggest draw is the imperil fields. So she has a 40% imperil field to earth, which is huge. So that's an extra 40% imperil, and that lasts for 15 turns, which is crazy. And she does 30% to light and to fire. I mean, those alone right there are, worth pulling for, in my opinion. But then in her Brave Shift form, she's over here dealing insanely good evoke damage. At least in Clash of Wills, it's really, really strong. So yeah, she's doing some really good damage. And she even has on-demand AoE 85% breaks that go with a bolting strike chain. It is Earth Elemental, but that's fine. All of these skills are associated with their elements, so they are elemental. You can't imbue her with anything, right? So she's not an imbuable mage, she's not an imbuable evoker, and so you do have to sort of stick with the elements that she's strong to. But man, she's got 3 elements to choose from, which is awesome. And then of course her biggest damage in Clash of Wills is her Brave Shift Limit Burst, which is really big, doing a 225 evoke modifier that's earth elemental, and that's really big, and also comes with a perfect dispel on the boss, which is pretty awesome. Her normal limit burst is also pretty neat because it does a 55% earth amp to the team, to the party. So if you don't have someone like Sylvie on the team, this could be very useful. And then it also does a ramping amplifier to herself. So 2 turns after casting this, she'll have a 100% earth amplify on her. So that will help her limit burst deal even more damage. So yeah, I mean, she's a top tier damage dealer that also has a lot of great support skills in her kit. So she definitely makes the top 5 on this list. My girl Esther. So it might surprise you that she's only number 2 on the list. You can surely guess who number 1 is after this. Hopefully that was a surprise to you. This doesn't mean that that Esther is not my best girl, but as I've been saying, support units are prized much more than damage dealers. But Esther is not just a damage dealer. Now, she is a damage dealer, of course, in her normal form, and she's an incredibly strong damage dealer. She is the first global exclusive premium unit, so she comes with a very strong limit burst modifier after using her cooldown calm before the storm. That turns her limit burst modifier to a 375 times modifier, which at the time when she released was the strongest limit burst modifier outside of using outside of a premium unit using Tyvus' Spirit or something like that. And on top of that, it was non-elemental, so you can imbue her with any element. Obviously, lightning is her strongest, but the fact that she's imbuable and she could just go any element made her extremely versatile as a damage dealer. And then on top of that, in her normal form, she even has a little bit of support for the team with 120% killers for the team to Demon, Machine, Stone, and Reaper. Which is really great, plus 300% attack, defense, and spirit buffs for the whole team. So it's really nice seeing something like that, seeing some support skills like that in a damage dealer. She even has this neat little skill that you can imbue with, or imbue to an ally, so that they can chain Extreme Nova with her, because she came with Extreme Nova frames, and at the time of her release, there weren't that many units that had Extreme Nova frames. Nowadays, there are a lot more that can chain with Esther, which is really nice, and there have been a few limited time story event materials that have come out that also allow you to chain with Esther if you equip that materia to a unit. So she's gotten a lot more chaining buddies since her first release, but that was a bit of an issue when she first came out. She also comes with an on-demand 87% defense break, which is pretty awesome, and you can even do accuracy reduction. But yeah, I mean, she's mainly here for her damage in her normal form, and even at EX0, you've probably seen me do a lot of sort of budget clears with my EX0 Esther. Even at EX0, she can dish out some serious damage, and she only gets better with each EX level. So by EX2, she's dealing, you know, double the damage of her EX0. EX3, it's even better. And yeah, she's just a really strong and versatile damage dealer all around. And she only got better when they gave her morale scaling to her limit burst. So when she first came out, she had no morale scaling to her limit burst, and so she was stuck with that 375 times modifier, which was, you know, was for Clash of Will standards, it was fairly low by Clash of Will standards. You know, you still had Skye with like a 705 times modifier, right? And so you see a 375 times modifier, not that strong. But then when Sylvie came out, they added morale scaling to her limit burst, and so it now goes up to a 375, and that's before her Calm Before the Storm ability, so that's a total of a 550 times modifier in Clash of Wills. Still not the top of the damage charts in Clash of Wills, but still very, very strong and very useful. Now, what makes her even more useful in scenarios like Clash of Wills is her Brave Shift form, which is an incredibly useful tank. She is a very, very strong physical tank, one of the tankiest physical tanks in the game, next to, you know, Runda. Runda leads the pack, you know, leads everybody in physical tanking. Runda is just stupidly tanky, but Esther is very close in tankiness, because she hits really high HP and really high defense fairly easily. And she's also the one of the only other units in the game that can easily maintain Omni Cover. So she has this on-demand skill that does an Omni Cover with only 40% damage reduction. So keep that in mind. It's a fairly squishy cover if you're taking a lot of magic damage, but it is still an on-demand Omni Cover, which is very useful. It also is really neat because it converts all lightning damage to HP restoration for all allies for 3 turns when using this skill, which can definitely have its niche use. She also has an on-demand, well, I shouldn't say on-demand, she has another Omni Cover on her Brave Shift Limit Burst with a slightly higher damage reduction to it. And, you know, that also comes with 75% general mitigation, which is very, very useful, and a re-raise on her, which is quite nice. And then she's got some other support skills in here, you know, but really she's just here for the tankiness, and she does the tanking very, very well. And so what's great about Esther is that she can do both of these roles, and she can do them very well. She's a role shifter, so she doesn't have, you know, you can have her in either form if you want, and she is very, very strong at both roles. And that's very, very unique for a damage dealer to have 2 unique roles and to be very good at both roles. I mean, literally top tier in both roles, right? So she's a top tier damage dealer and a top tier tank. And in Clash of Wills, she is still one of the best units to take into Clash of Wills, which is why she's right at the top of my top 20 list. And at number 1, we have Paladin Sylvie. So, of course, in my personal opinion, Paladin Sylvie is the best unit in the game right now. You know, supports, in my opinion, are so much more important than your damage dealers. You know, damage dealers, I often say, you know, are a dime a dozen. They come in and fall out of the meta usually much faster than support units. And I think Sylvie is going to be around for a long time. She is in, you know, pretty much every clear video that you see in Clash of Wills, even in Dark Visions, and really in any content where you can use Earth or lightning element for her amps. Because that's probably the biggest thing that she has going for her, is she's the only unit that can do an AoE 100% elemental amp to 2 elements, those elements being earth and lightning. And that is just absolutely massive. The damage increase from that 100% amp for the entire team is just absolutely massive, and helps for just totally decimating content and really ramping up your damage. And so even though she personally isn't doing a whole lot of damage, she is boosting the rest of the team to the point that she is absolutely worth the slot on your team. Even though she is not doing any damage herself, she is totally worth that slot. And you know, even if that was all she was bringing to the table with those amps, you know, that would be great. But she has so much, you know, so much going on in her kit. She's incredibly bulky for one thing, so making her a passive provoke unit is really easy, you know, just by using some standard provoke gear, and you know, giving her the Dancer's Diadem of Will, of course, makes her 100% passive provoke. That's the easiest way to do it. You can also use Moogle Charms and everything else to make her passive provoke. And doing that is really smart, because you see, I've given her some Blizzard Orbs, and that is to get her to proc counters as a provoke unit, because her counter, this is one of the things that just makes her absolutely broken. Her counter does a revive for all allies, gives all allies re-raise after they've been revived. So even if the units on the field are dead, they get revived, and then they also get the re-raise. Even the dead units get the re-raise, and plus it restores some HP and MP. And if she's countering 5 times, you know, everyone's back to full health, easy peasy. And so this, you know, that's another one of those things that just kind of makes her a broken unit. It basically makes the team invincible or immortal, as long as, you know, the boss is dealing some kind of damage where she can counter. You're basically immortal, and you can just keep on going. But then she's got all these other great support things in her kit. You know, she's got elemental resists with 80% across the board on demand, with 200% to lightning and to earth. And, you know, those each come with 75% type to mitigation to physical and magical. Unfortunately, her only general mitigation is on this one-time Magnus skill, and it only lasts for 3 turns. So it's sort of like, you know, for use in emergencies. It's really great in Clash of Wills, because it does 400 morale restore every turn for those 3 turns. But yeah, so that's a little bit for emergencies, but it still definitely comes in handy in certain situations. She also has really strong regens. Those come with morale fill as well, so she's really great in Clash of Wills for morale fill. She of course comes with the standard stat break immunity, ailment immunity, stop charm immunity, you know, with again with some HP and MP fill there. She's a really great again, earth and lightning support unit, coming with imbues and amps. So even her standard amps are 45%, which is very, very nice. She's got some nice buffs with some, you know, some okay breaks, but usually, you know, it's the other effects that kind of come with it that are kind of nice, like a 200% LB damage boost. That's nice with 10 LB fill to the team. She's got 5 stacks of Mirage on this one. So yeah, lots of really neat little support skills. She's got this sort of interesting and sort of niche ability here in Magical Wish. In her Brave Shift form, it's Powerful Wish, and that's just Magical Wish is a magic attack, whereas Powerful Wish is a physical attack. And it comes with these these abilities that they're really only useful against specific enemy types. It has to be either stone or insect or demon. And in Clash of Wills, it could potentially go up to a 1,500 times modifier, which if you were dual wielding could actually deal respectable damage. Unfortunately, it does not come with a triple cast, so, you know, obviously that would be way overpowered if you could triple cast this ability. But if you dual cast, you could still do some decent damage. I've never actually used this skill in Clash of Wills yet. I haven't, just haven't had the opportunity to use it. So, it's probably not going to see that much use. It's very, very niche. Now in her Brave Shift form, she's got some insane killers, right? So she's got single target 250% killers to demon, insect, and stone, and then it also provides 150% killers to the whole team for 5 turns, and that's on a 2-turn cooldown. So you can essentially have full uptime on 250% killer to your strongest DPS unit, which is really, really nice, and that's for 3 different races, which is great. And then she does have some chaining skills, so she can do a bit of chaining. The damage isn't non-existent. The mods are decent, but she's not really built for the damage. But they come with some nice little skills in here, like LB fill if you need to do some LB fill for the whole team, or morale fill. Again, she's great for morale fill in Clash of Wills, or if you need to do some healing while you're also doing a little bit of chaining. So that's really nice to have. Now the big ticket skills in this form, there are 3 things that are huge in her Brave Shift form, and so you do need to have her at least EX1 to get access to these skills, but her Marion's Blessing skills are the ones that are doing the big 100% amp. Now it's a ramping amp, and it takes 3 turns to get there. So the first turn you cast it, it's a 50% amp. The following turn, it casts a 75% amp, and the third turn, or the turn after that one, it does a 100% amp to the whole team. Okay, and so what's really great about this too is that on that first cast, if you've been imbued with an element, say the boss imbues your team with an element that it absorbs, because bosses like to do that sometimes, using this skill will remove all other imbues. So every other element that you are imbued with, it will remove that and just give you the lightning element, which is awesome. So cool. Now it only does that when you first cast it. It won't do that when it re-ups the amps every turn. All right, so do keep that in mind. But she's got that for earth and for lightning. So that's a 100% amp to lightning or earth for the entire team. That is just huge for your team. She's got this little skill, which is a holdover from her 7-star form, but it also comes in handy for certain strategies where maybe you've done an LB on one turn, but you need to get your LB up the next turn to sort of finish the fight. And this it only does it for 1 unit, but it fills their LB to max, gives them a 400% full buff with a 300% LB damage boost, removes all breaks, and just for kicks, gives you 1200 morale right there. I've definitely used this in Clash of Wills specifically for that morale boost. That 1200 morale is huge, and so that's a really neat skill. But probably the most important thing in her Brave Shift, other than those amps, is her Brave Shift Limit Burst, which does a 400% full buff, 250% LB damage boost. That's fine. But then it actually adds a modifier to your LBs, to your team's LBs. And this is really cool. And so it adds a modifier that goes up to 30 times in Clash of Wills. And that's really cool. It will also go up to 60 times if it's an LB that doesn't already have morale attached to it. It's 30 times if it's a partial unmitigated LB or a morale scaling LB. But that can make a big difference. And on units like Skye, where she can double dip on that, so Skye would actually get a total 90 times modifier from this in Clash of Wills, because she would get 60 from Skye's first part, which has no morale attached to it, and then she would get another 30 for the second part that has morale scaling it. So that's a 90 times modifier boost to units like Skye. So the versatility of this is really, really cool, and the potential for this to deal a lot of damage and to really increase your damage. So Sylvie is just sort of this really great all-around support unit. She's insanely bulky, so it's really hard to kill her. She comes with lots of elemental resists naturally in her kit. She can provide lots of elemental resists, and yeah, she's just an absolutely fantastic support unit. And I foresee that Sylvie will be around for a long, long time in this game. I think she's going to be around for a while. And that's why she is number 1 on my top 20 list. All right, so a bit of an honorable mention. This is a kind of a last-minute addition to this video. I wasn't planning on reviewing any JP units aside from Runda for this particular one, but it has recently come to my attention that Berserker Rikku has the potential to basically destroy everything with relative ease. Now, Rikku, you know, if you like this particular type of sort of, you know, cheesy exploitation of game mechanics, then Rikku is really great for you. Personally, I don't really like using sort of cheese strategies or exploitations of the game mechanics to, you know, just destroy the game and break the game. I don't really like that. Sort of takes the fun out of it for me, but it is really cool to see. Now, what Rikku does is she's basically a direct upgrade to the Golden Riser strategy. And if you know anything about the Golden Riser strategy, he does, you know, an insane store buff. You know, you take like 3 or 4 turns to do his store buff, and then you use Bulwark to give him an increased attack modifier, so that when he counters, he does, you know, an insane amount of damage on his counter. Now, the Golden Riser strategy takes a lot. It takes, I mean, I don't want to say it takes a lot, because, you know, you can use relatively cheap units, but, you know, the gear is fairly specific in Golden Riser builds. You know, you need like poppies, STMR, you need the boss to make sure that they are susceptible and able to be damaged by all elements and things like that. So there's just a lot of setup for the Golden Riser strategy. Once you have it in place, it's good, but sort of like making sure you have everything set up is important. With Rikku, however, you just need to make sure that she is, you know, taking a lot of hits so that she can counter, and yeah. So the best way to explain it is just to direct you to the video that Sinzar put up, and I will link that in the comments below. So I'll put a sticky comment below to Sinzar's video showing just how insane Rikku is with her counters. So it basically starts with her normal form Limit Burst, all right, which adds a modifier, right? So it adds a 450 times modifier to her normal attack, right? And if that will do it, yeah. And you see, it's her Brave Shift normal attack that you're interested in, okay? And so her Brave Shift normal attack is a tag chain. All right, it's a 7-hit tag chain, and it has a 100 times modifier that is 50% unmitigated. So when you add that extra 450 times, that actually gets doubled by the 50% unmitigated, right? And so that 450 times modifier is actually a 900 times modifier added to a 200 times modifier. So for an 1100 times modifier, tag chaining attack. And so you can already see, and it's non-elemental, so you can imbue her with whatever element you want. It's a physical damage. It is not locked to any element. And so you can already sort of see, if you can get her to do a lot of counters, which is very easy to do with minimal gear, she will do some insane damage. And don't forget that if you have her, I think it's her, is it her TMR? If you give her a TMR along with it, that adds another 50 times modifier to all her abilities. So that makes that tag chain a total 1200 times modifier. So even if she only countered, let's say 3 times, that's a 3600 times modifier. That's like Esther's LB. Okay, not even joking. Like, you know, with all of Esther's buffs and LB buffs, active buffs, and all of that stuff on the field, you know, her LB modifier usually comes out to around, you know, 3,600 times or 3,800 times modifier if you've got Sylvie on the field and things like that. And so she's able to reach some insane levels of modifiers. And if you get her, you know, do any more than 3 counters, and I mean, she's just absolutely blowing things away. She is decimating content. So I feel like I have to put, you know, an honorable mention out about Rikku. This is the new Rikku that just came out on the current banner. So the current banner is still, as of this video, the current banner is still up. And like I said, check out the video first, see what it's all about, see what this sort of exploit and this cheese is all about. See if that's something that you're interested in. You know, if you like those types of strategies and that's your play style, you may want to hop on Berserker Rikku while the banner is still up. Personally, I am not going to go for Rikku. That type of strategy just does not interest me. It's just not fun for me. I didn't hop on the Golden Riser train because that, you know, even though I had Golden Riser EX3, I had all the units, I had all the gear, it just didn't interest me, and so I never used Golden Riser for that exploitation. But if you were the type of person that liked Golden Riser, then Rikku is going to be your new favorite unit. She is going to destroy everything in her path. And yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there, and I wanted to do this little honorable mention. She doesn't have a place on my top 20 list because, again, she doesn't fit into my play style, but, you know, you may want to hop on this. All right, well, that pretty much does it. There's my top 20 list of units. I hope that this was informative to you. I hope you didn't fall asleep partway through. But yeah, thank you for following me, and thank you guys for all of your support. The next video I'll put out will be or the next in the series will be my top 20 STMRs, followed by my top 20. It'll probably actually be top 15 vision cards. I'll see if I can do top 20. It's actually, you know, the vision cards is a little bit hard to find 20 that I think are really top tier, but yeah, we'll see. But yeah, look out for my next video, probably coming out early next week, on my top 20 STMRs. I'll even do a top 10 TMRs to go along with it in that same video. That one should be a little bit shorter, I think, just because I won't have as much to talk about. It'll really just be like, hey, here's the STMR, here's why I think it's good, moving on, right? But yeah, so hopefully this was informative to you. If you have any constructive criticism you want to you know, send my way in the comments below, please feel free to do so. If you want to you know, argue with me about units that are on the list, or units you think should be on the list, or you know, also feel free to do that in the comments below. I love talking about the game. As long as it's a civil debate, I am happy to do so. So thank you guys once again, and I will see you on the other side.